So in the last video, I said that we were going to use the workouts for a week and put that into a block and learn how to do that. But I think before we dive into the idea of how we should put our weekly split into a block to create a good block, we should discuss how to actually, what are the principles of a good block? Because if you're going to be building your own program, it's really important to keep this big picture in mind and to keep how to construct a successful block in mind. Because often we can get carried away with temporary goals and really just wanting results now. And we can kind of forget the big picture and forget what are some of the foundational guidelines to creating a good block. And I think I outlined that decently enough here, hopefully. So here are some of the foundations of a good block. First one here is having a strong and defined goal. So what's the exact point of your block? Why are you making that at all? And a bigger picture is, what's your long-term goal? I like to plan out my workouts, or sorry, my exercise goals for 6 months, even a year. Not my programs exactly, but what do I want to achieve? And what are the best steps to get there? Because let's say your main goal is strength. You're not a big person on size, you just want to get really strong. Well, I think foundationally, we all need hypertrophy. The bigger muscle always wins. So having a few blocks set off to work on hypertrophy training is probably not a bad idea. And setting up that kind of base in order to gain that strength is a good idea. So you should do some basic hypertrophy training. Do that for a few months, and then maybe work up to some strength and start picking the intensity up. And depending on if you want to test a 1-rep max or maybe like a 6-rep max, base your training around that. Maybe if you want to build size, you would do a lot more hypertrophy training. And really, you don't need to focus a whole lot on strength if you're working for size. Maybe put a few blocks in there for variation, stress the muscle some more. Might not be a bad idea, and go from there. So having that big picture in mind helps you with the short-term goals and helps you with constructing the block. Usually blocks, like we talked about in the past video, they come in 3 main forms: hypertrophy, strength, and peaking. So there's a question mark there, because which of these ones do you want to use a block for, right? Do you want to build that strength, build the size, or peak for a 1-rep max, or that short-term strength? And deciding on that's going to be tough for some people, because it can seem kind of confusing. In my next video, we'll go into some of the pros and cons of each one, but more so why you should pick strength training over peaking for a certain amount of blocks, and how it applies to each level of a beginner, intermediate, and advanced lifter. So having that long-term goal, you can dial in on which one exactly you want to work on. So the next one is have set variables. So this is really important for a good program overall. You want to try to control as many variables in the program as possible. Why? It's that later on at the bottom there, you can experiment and you can improve on things. We'll go into that in a bit. But control as many variables as you can, and that's just really good so you can see your short-term results. How do you know if certain training styles work best for you if you never really controlled for certain things? If you didn't log your results, maybe didn't log your weights that you jumped and you just said that you remembered? No one likes to keep a log because everyone thinks the memory is good. Sure, you might be able to remember the past few weeks, but how about the past few months, past year? Highly doubt it. Heck, I can't even remember my past few weeks with some of my main lifts for the weight of that. So it's important to log it and to make sure you know exactly what day you improved on, and you can compare that over time. It's really important. So control all these different variables: sets, reps, intensity, frequency, etc., so you can just build a good program overall. And like I said, you want to control those variables. So just make sure you have the details of that program, of that block laid out. as it falls in line with hypertrophy, strength, peaking. Okay, in case you don't know, hypertrophy, that's going to be a little bit lower sets, a little bit higher reps. Main thing is there's going to be more volume and more frequency. That's the main thing with hypertrophy training. There's a lot of research coming in that supports this idea that it's not so much about the sets and reps, but it's more about the overall volume in the week. So keep that in mind. Strength, that's going to be best for kind of a mix between, so let's go into peaking before we go strength. Peaking is a lot higher sets, a lot lower reps. So that'll be like sets of 6, 1 rep, like 6 sets, 1 rep kind of thing, or 6 sets, 3 reps, that kind of thing. Higher rest time, lower frequency because you need more time to recover, lower volume, right? Higher intensity, all these things. And strength, it's kind of a mix of that. So that could be anywhere from 3 to 6 sets even, of anywhere from around 4 to 5 to 8 reps. And I like to operate in the 6 reps. I think it's just a really solid even number, and it translates down into the 1 rep max pretty well. So that's a great way to work for strength. Okay, then we have time frame. So this ties really well into our strong and defined goals, as you want to think about how long is this block going to last. Usually it's a month, but what if you want to really work on size? I know for myself that I'm going to be working on some hypertrophy in the next few months. I'm going to start that up, and I'm going to really be nailing that down for a few months. For some people, this seems like a long time for powerlifters, because powerlifters, we want to hit these blocks quickly and keep moving forward, keep progressing. So you do hypertrophy, strength, peaking, and then you automatically go up, test your max, and then repeat. But I want to build some size up because I want to jump some weight classes. I don't want to stay at around 185 pounds forever. I want to be at around 200. So if I can gain 10 pounds in 2 to 3 months, like I'm currently doing, I'm currently gaining weight and doing a little bit of hypertrophy and strength training right now, then I'll be able to get up to a weight class that I like. Maybe I'll cut back down for a few weeks, lose a few pounds, get a little bit leaner, and then we'll work into a strength and then peaking phase, and then I can test out and test my motor at max. So that's an example of what I'm going to do. And how that ties in my time frame is I look at it like, how long is each block? How long do I need it? How long is it necessary to have? I don't want to create blocks that are too long or too short. I want to have it just right, obviously. And knowing my goals, knowing when I want to get certain places, you can space your blocks out. Makes sense. Stick to the plan. This is important with any training plan, is you don't want to just change things up halfway through with no reason. It's really hard for me to change things in my program when I know they're going bad. I'll give you an example. With my deadlifts right now, I think I set it at too high of sets. Deadlifts typically are more strenuous and they're a lot heavier for me, so I need to have the lower amount of sets. But I've kept it at 5 sets. Yeah, 5 sets, 6 reps. And I think for me, I don't have the type of work capacity built up to be able to handle that right now. And maybe just my body type as well. I'm a bit more fast twitch. That could be a part of it. Is I'm just more used to lower sets. So what I'm deciding to do is I'm going to lower it down to 3 sets, 6 reps. Normally wouldn't advise this, but I think I'm making a good call here because my deadlifts are really suffering right now, and I think it might be overworked. There could be a lot of issues playing into this, but this isn't something I mess around with. But typically, I would advise everyone to stick to their plan. Unless something's going horribly wrong and you're getting weaker, don't change it. Just have faith in it and push through. But finally, this might seem contrasting. This might seem like it's going against the last point, but you want to experiment. But don't experiment in the same block. Experiment the next time around. So you don't want to change things up in the middle of the block just willy-nilly. You want to wait around. The next time you're going back into the hypertrophy block, maybe change a few variables, or ideally change one variable, besides your weights, of course. And then if you can see there's a more drastic improvement or less drastic improvement, you know what the factor is. Maybe instead of having 2-minute rests in between your sets, you crank it up to 3 minutes or 4 minutes. See how that works out for you. Maybe instead of doing a certain assistance exercise as your main assistance exercise of the day, you do a different one. Things like that, and you can test stuff out and if it works for you or not. Those kinds of experiments, those are the only way of knowing what actually works for you. Otherwise, you're just guessing. Otherwise, you're just saying, it probably is my body type, probably my genetics. You don't really know. So when you nail things down, when you actually experiment on yourself and test these things out, you'll know for sure. And that is the best way to train, in my opinion. And I made plenty of these mistakes, is I have just thrown things in, have changed up my plan completely, and I don't even know what works for me or not. So that's why I've started that conjugate style training, and I'm not doing the system of speed work, heavy work, volume work. I am just doing changing the different lifts. That's the only variable that I'm changing in my typical programming. So try to follow that system of changing one variable at a time, and then you can really see what you improve on, and it'll help you as a lifter become better. So I think next week we'll actually talk about how to put those weeks into a block and how to build a really strong block, understanding what our weekly workout routines would be like. And then maybe even in the same video, we'll link together different blocks and how to build a really good program, a 3-month program, let's say, using each of those blocks.